So first of all, thank you so much for the morning first part. In fact, I was just taking a feedback and some of you said, okay, the first part is good. What about the second? And that's where Datta comes into the picture. We'll make sure the fireside chat as it happens, let's try to lit the fire, Datta. More important, I think it's something which, what we are saying that, look, what's happened has happened. More important is about really talking about how exactly the new next will happen. And let me set up the context for everyone's, I would say, attention out here. You've seen the profile of Datta, and I think he has traversed that journey of what we used to say captives to GICs to GCC. More important, this facet of the evolution per se, what it means at what stage, what juncture, and what's gonna lie ahead. More important, this narrative, what exactly will come out in next 20 minutes, is also positioned at this aspect about how data, AI, analytics is intertwined today in terms of how GCCs want to script their future. And not to take out, beyond GCCs, is this whole India's AI story. So in that sequence, Datta, first of all, let me take something off the script and start with something which should awaken them up. What's keeping you awake at night?
I think, what keeps me awake at night is what is the next, let's say, about 5 to 8 years of India tech industry story. Because I'm pretty much convinced that we're not going to join the dots in a very organic fashion from last 25 years of phenomenal success of India's tech industry. So where are the dots and how to join them is what keeps me awake. Right.
And if I take what you said, I'm sure 20 years back, and I'm just going in terms of a bit hindsight and also kind of a, let's say, retro mode. Did you envisage what stage GCCs are today? Because it's always what we say, look, every newspaper, every kind of publication today is kind of looking at GCCs today. But that story 20 years back, did you envisage this exactly would be a watershed moment for GCCs?
Not at all. I mean, I think the GCC, the word GCC is probably a more recent nomenclature which was given to companies which already was in existence. Because when Bosch decided to start a tech center in India, it's a very funny story actually. One half, let's say British, half Indian managing director of Bosch Limited was a heading manufacturing company. Was sipping his, Earl Grey tea in the morning and reading newspaper, and there was a small piece of article. This I'm talking of 89 or so, 1989 or so, which said India has so many, educated, technical people. The next wave of India is software. Somebody wrote this small piece of newspaper article. He cut the thing and he pasted it on a very, famous Bosch green memo, which is a snail mail. You write, really physically write, and sent it to the headquarters of Bosch. And they said, hey, is it really true? Okay, Bosch is a very quiet entrepreneurial company. And they said, okay, why don't you do something? And he created a small subsidiary under then Myco. Bosch was known as Myco in India.
What year was that, if I may ask?
Motor Industries Company Limited. So we made spark plugs. We were known more for spark plugs.
And that was what,
fuel
1990?
injection pumps and all that.
1990 you're talking about?
This is 1990, yes.
Almost 35 years back.
Yes. Okay. And then he just created a Motor Industries Software Services Limited under the hood of Myco when there was hardly anybody who is servicing Germany. And then 1 year later, we became Robert Bosch India Limited. And then few years later, we became Robert Bosch Engineering Business Solutions. And then we became Bosch Global Software Technologies as we grew. I think, when I look back, nobody ever imagined that this story would unfold like it is. Today, we have 36,000 people around the world. And we have spawned our centers in Vietnam, Mexico, and other parts of the world, and we do P&L business of 170 million, which also caters to Indian market, while we brand ourselves as GCC in some sense. And I think I always say we are a one GCC which has, in a very positive manner, violated all the norms of a GCC. Because we do external business, P&L, we do corporate research, we do everything here. So, and you know, the story goes, when we built our building, the then managing director told, why do we need so much of parking space? 80 parking space is good enough. Who will buy cars in India? And today, we struggle to have fine parking places, and we have 3 buildings and 30,000 people. So nobody envisaged this. But the more fascinating story is the kind of impact that you can bring onto the world stage. You know, when the story started, India had 2 models of car, one Maruti and one Hyundai. And I think most of us did not have a car, but we were working for car software. None of us had license, but we were developing car software. And today, if you see, there is not a single piece of the car which is not developed out of this center in Bosch in India. I think that's the journey that we have traversed.
Awesome, awesome. So if you look at, and this is such a great anecdote what you mentioned, specifically with 1,700 GCCs and growing today, I think from your opinion and your perspective, how do you see them charting out this journey? Because A, it's nuanced, because what will work may not work for others. Second, it's also about really understanding the parent organization and the associated modalities. Third is their own willingness and intent to do that. What do you believe in that sense GCC leaders should be doing to say, look, I am running the show, but this is which can take me to the next level or so?
It's a very apt question, Samir, because one thing that haunts GCCs is identity crisis. Because they are very tightly coupled to their principles, to headquarters, and many times they think, and the mental model is that you're conditioned to think that you don't have enough degrees of freedom to do something beyond what is mandated for you, right? But this is, to be honest, this is, how you construct the story for your center. If you think what earns you a seat for a conversation with your global board, then you will realize if you have a powerful story, which is linked to the top line of the company or the competitive edge of the company, you get a seat on the table to converse with the board of the company. For example, we have an annual board conversation where we pitch new ideas, we get funding, we run a fund out of this place with the entire board of Bosch, in headquarters of Bosch, to run programs which are relevant for Bosch from this place for the world. So I would think that the leadership of GCC must believe that they can actually take charge of more degrees of freedom other than what they've been mandated to in a manner. It's not, you need to pitch them back to the board and get it. It's a soft power actually.
So in terms of the attributes, and I'm just adding and maybe asking you one more question over here. In terms of this whole attributes for a GCC leader, strategic orientation, C-level advocacy, stakeholder management, this whole piece of capability building is good. But do you think there are more attributes which can be built to say, look, this is where I'll challenge the status quo? Because that's what I'm getting from you, that, look, it could be just a back office. Yeah. But the onus is on GCC leaders and, of course, their teams to change that. Is that how you see the story?
Absolutely. I think, the minimum that you can do, if you don't do anything, you become a back office, right? And you will stay there. And there will always be people who define your agenda from somewhere. But how do you beat this? So you are an influencer in the morning, entrepreneur in the evening, innovator in the night. I think you play different hats. It's in a tech industry, especially in India, where there are a lot of IT companies who are listed, there's a lot of past success, scale, growth. Sometimes the role of GCC leaders is not spoken enough. But I'm just happy that the GCC is coming to the foreground now in the current context of many companies.
I'm hearing for the first time that the attributes of a GCC leader should be entrepreneur, influencer, and innovator.
Absolutely.
So far, I thought it's something else actually.
No. I mean, it's a highly. I mean, sometimes we don't read this. A GCC leader must be an entrepreneur. He has to be a P&L person. In his mind, he has to think P&L, and he has to care for Indian market, because that's where you can build newer stories. And he has to be an innovator. He cannot just accept the global mandate and just follow it. And we must create products and narratives which are relevant for the whole world, not just based on the context that has been handed out. So it's a very, very entrepreneurial role. If you want to make that entrepreneurial, if we stick to the cost plus format, if you stick to the global mandate given to GCC, it remains there. I think the maturity models only be at the level of skills, competencies, and the leverage. Either it's cost leverage or it'll become a competency leverage. If you want to scale beyond these two, leadership has a big role to play there.
Great. One more, I would say, aspect over there, and I'll switch to the next, I would say, dimension. The narrative you talked about. How does this narrative of a GCC gets built? Because it has to really be appealing to the stakeholders of the parent organization. The second aspect about boards really saying, look, yeah, that's something we should really look into. And third is even the internal GCC teams buying that. What could be a secret sauce of creating a very, what I call, binding narrative?
So the good part is, when you look at few years back, it was difficult to find something, because we had a lot to learn from the headquarters. And as I said, we didn't have the car knowledge. You have to learn the vehicle knowledge and vehicle systems, etc. But today, when you look at it, we are either at the same level of capability as anybody else, or even we have an advantage compared to anybody else. So the new possibilities are, one, Indian market, the two, the technology. Because if you see, India's growth story has never been spoken so often in the global boards. Whatever may be the reason, the geopolitics, China plus one, whatever could be the narrative, but the India's growth story is a fascinating story for many global boards. Now, how can we make this happen out of India? And this can be one strong narrative of GCCs, because India's growth story has a big tech behind it. And GCCs so far did not pay much attention to the India challenges, India problem statements. But I think we have one leverage, which is India's story. And AI, in the last 18 months or so, every board is deeply thinking and investing on how to pivot to the AI-first enterprise, or how do we transform themselves to the AI-led enterprise of the future. Now, who else other than India can influence and play a big role there? These two are powerful levers to get a seat on the table.
So in that quest, and I pick up what you really said, and I liked it actually, this quest for building AI-first enterprise. And that's true. Fortune 500, 50, 2,000, 5,000, it's a mad game over there. Now, in the context over there, coming back to the GCCs, AI, analytics, Gen AI, and I'll use that in the same continuum. How does this whole aspect of capability building, new solutions, new platform, because one needs to be really tied to the hip with the parent organization. And when it comes to AI analytics, this is not something which is so easy, because there is always those pieces around, okay, this is what the parent organization should do, this is what GCC should do. How do you see this whole fulcrum getting changed? And what is the way where the new age AI capabilities can be built by the GCCs?
Absolutely. I think if you classify GCCs into two clusters. GCCs like us or anybody else in the audience who've been in existence for quite some time, maybe 10, 15 years, and GCCs which are starting now, right? Both will have a very different trajectory of their journey. Now, I think for us, we need to erase our muscle memory of hiring at scale and, brute force service orientation, cost as a primary conversation, etc. And we need to change our hiring patterns. We need to change our competency landscape in our organizations. And to some extent, I would even say, a headcount, very large headcount, can even be a baggage. Maybe you need to find alternate ways of your workforce and build very strong capability. It's available. In India, it's available. Now, the advantage is, as a GCC, you can provide context for AI skill. You can solve some of the most fascinating problem statements. For example, if you are to solve autonomous driving challenge in road conditions like India, now you do video perception algorithms developed out of India to drive autonomous driving story
and
for
also,
Indian road.
Also in Bangalore, it doesn't work because we don't have roads actually. So.
No, that's a challenge. You need to have a video perception for cows on the road, dogs on the road, and all kinds of vehicles. There are 10 vehicles, 10 varieties of vehicles going on the same road. And then, if you have to solve healthcare challenges in India using, powerful AI algorithms, it can happen out of India. So there are contexts that can be provided to skills, and this is possible. I'll give you an example. We have taken up a mission across Bosch to reduce R&D spend by $1 billion.
$1 billion.
As $1 billion, right? Okay. R&D spend. We are a $92 billion company worldwide, 92 billion euro company worldwide. Whatever percentage of R&D, we have taken a cut saying that we will reduce R&D spend by $1 billion. 500 million out of this happens out of our center because we drive software engineering optimization through GenAI, and this initiative is anchored, driven out of Bangalore for the whole of Bosch world. So this is the power that you can get because of the soft power. I would say this is soft power that you get out of the technology. Now, a 500 million directly goes, you're contributing to the bottom line of your global organization. Now you come to, if you solve autonomous driving level 2 plus problem statement for India and India-like countries. India is not alone. India-like countries, Latin America, ASEAN, many other countries. Actually, you have created a solution or a product which adds to the top line of the organization. So GCCs are perceived to be operating at the bottom line, but actually you can peg to the top line of the organization. So this possibility happens only because of technology now.
No, I think that's a great point what you mentioned, that essentially the focus person, and this could be also true because of the transfer pricing and how it's set up. The piece around really looking at bottom line catches the fancy not only of the stakeholders in India, but let's say the parent organ. But what you are suggesting that, look, there could be a different lens to look altogether, which is where the new age products, application platforms, and even looking at how it can be solved in a much better way for the parent organization, which will have a straight directly proportional to the top line.
Absolutely.
But in that mode, Datta, and I want to be taking a very different view out here. One, the AI story, Gen AI story across is still very, what I call it, half-baked. If I ask in this room, what's the definition of Gen AI, we'll get 500 different definitions. Second, how it's done, implemented, it's very different from each because infrastructure, data, of course, differs. In your view, when a GCC, or let me also put an enterprise look at building their AI journeys, what should be considered over there? And the risk or the cost of failure is too high.
I mean, you're right, because you have to fly the aircraft and fix it too, right? That's a situation now. Because all deterministic future of AI is not yet written. You need to create your narrative when the narrative itself is developing, which is okay, let's accept this. But I think the capability is to, the game is to build capability to do high fidelity experiments very quickly and move some of them at industrial scale. Now, the example that I gave you of leveraging GenAI to solve software engineering problem, we from software industry always had the pleasure of looking at other industries, software eating other industries, right? Now, finally, software is eating software industry. So now, how do we make this happen? It's almost for India tech industry, it's about demonstrating that we can disrupt ourselves in a very creative fashion. So we we experiment how do we deploy, Gen AI in software engineering lifecycle in the automotive domain, because automotive domain is very safety critical. You cannot accept generated code directly into the vehicle. None of us would like to drive a car which has Gen AI generated code, right? We need to have a safety critical validation. Now, we do that. We have high-speed experiments which are running in the organization to make this happen. So, organization must build a startup-like capability to create a lot of experimentation and then bring what is viable and feasible internally. That's the game.
Let me take a rapid fire in the interest of the time, more specific to India AI story. Assumption, if you are given a charge of running India AI mission story, what is that one rallying cry you would put across to anyone who's looking to create India AI story? One rallying cry.
For me, India is a country of, I don't know how many languages. I think there are no LLM which is available today to solve India's diverse language problems. Coming from a mobility world, I would like the car to have an, Gen AI-based, conversant engine which can take any language, Bhojpuri, Telugu, Hindi, Kannada, Malayalam, all that in the car.
5 years down the line, what would you suggest this crowd to own? A EV car, a petrol car, or a diesel car, or a self-autonomous car, or just sit at home and do work from home?
None of them. So I think, coming from as Boschler, I cannot prescribe which fueled car you should drive.
For a minute, take out the corporate hat.
I'm sure 5 years from now, all that you mentioned will be still on the road. So you will still have petrol vehicles, you will still have diesel vehicles, you will still have electric vehicles, and all of them will be on the road.
Because the tougher question would have come your way if I ever asked you that when is the timeline of the metro completion in Bangalore? So that's not...
or the Ejipura flyover. Right.
Just last one on this, GCCs. And the story is really phenomenal. I think there's something great happening. But 5 years down the line, or just a future forward crystal gaze, how do you see when anyone is setting up a GCC in 2030, 5 years from now, should looking like?
So I think the first principles of GCC 5 years from now would be fundamentally based on what do you own, what do you deliver for the world, right? Either as a leader or as a topic or a theme for the world. A GCC will not be set up with a mindset that I will have 1,000 people, or I will have, an SEZ in Hyderabad, Bangalore, which location. I think I wouldn't expect that narrative. But if you're setting up a GCC 5 years from now, the question would be, what do you own for the world? So do you own the product? Do you own a piece of technology for the whole world? So that's the ownership for the world would be what I would imagine.
Awesome. I think for the last 20 minutes, if you could see, I wasn't tilting my head towards the audience because I was so glued in terms of the responses you were giving. And I like something when the responses are very direct, which are exactly deep, and really I would say meaningful, Datta, because that's something which I'm sure the crowd can resonate with. It's coming from your deep, very, very relatable experience because you've seen that, you've traversed that journey. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate. Can we have a round of applause for Datta, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.